completely swamped by a new subject. Or wish you could just absorb information like a sponge. Maybe you're eyeing a new skill for work, or finally want to tackle that language, but the sheer volume of things to learn feels, well, kind of insurmountable. Well, you are definitely not alone. And that feeling, that overwhelm, that's exactly what we're tackling today. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack how to learn anything quickly. It's this comprehensive guide, and it promises to shortcut your way to becoming truly well informed. It's packed with science backed strategies to seriously accelerate your learning.
Yeah, building on that feeling you just described, the really empowering thing here is that learning quickly, it isn't about being some kind of genius, right? Or having a magic ability. It's really about applying proven techniques. Sometimes they're even a bit counterintuitive, but they significantly speed up how you acquire new knowledge. So whether you're picking up a new language, maybe mastering an instrument, or even shifting to a completely new career, we're going to try and extract the most potent nuggets of wisdom from this guide to help you become a rapid, really effective learner.
Okay, so let's cut through the noise. Because this guide, How to Learn Anything Quickly, it kicks things off not with tactics, interestingly, but with a kind of blueprint, how to think about learning. They start by telling us to get, well, ridiculously specific with our goals. So not just learn programming, but something like master Python basics for data analysis in 30 days. And the why, that's not just fluffy motivation, is it? It feels more like a foundational leverage point.
Absolutely. The guide really argues that the why isn't just about sticking with it, though that's part of it. It's about directing your brain. When you actually write down why this skill matters, maybe it's a career pivot or a passion project, you're basically programming your subconscious, telling it to filter information, prioritize tasks, activate the right memory networks. It's a much deeper cognitive buy-in. And this connects really well to the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. The guide frames this as a critical filter for efficiency.
Right, and this isn't just about finding any 20%, is it? I think we often misunderstand that role. The guide seems to stress it's about finding that highest leverage 20%, the stuff that gives you those really disproportionate returns. So what's the biggest trap people fall into when they try to apply this to learning? And how does the guide help us find that true 20% in all the noise?
That's a really crucial question. The common mistake is picking the easiest 20%, or maybe just trying to do more of everything faster. But the guide emphasizes that finding the true 20%, that needs deliberate analysis. For instance, with language learning, it's not about obscure grammar rules right at the start. It's about mastering, say, the 1,000 most common words. Those cover maybe 80% of daily conversation. It means asking yourself, what are the minimum viable concepts or skills, the ones that unlock the greatest practical use right now? It's about radical prioritization, not just general efficiency.
Okay, so we've laid that strong foundation. Now, how do we actually engage with the material, without just passively consuming it? Because let's be honest, we've all done it, watched a dozen tutorial videos, felt like we learned something. But then you tried to do the thing and realized nothing actually stuck.
Exactly. And the guide is really emphatic on this. Passive consumption is just a mirage of learning. It feels productive, but it isn't. The real shift happens when you actively interact with the knowledge. And this isn't just about, doing quizzes at the end of a chapter. It's about forcing your brain to retrieve information from scratch. The aha moment for many people isn't when they're reviewing notes, it's when they try to recall them without looking. And this leads us straight into retrieval practice, which is really the backbone of building robust memory.
And retrieval practice, it often feels harder than just rereading, doesn't it? It feels like you're struggling a bit. But the guide suggests that struggle is actually the point, especially when you combine it with something like spaced repetition. How does that interplay, the struggle and the timing, make these techniques so much more powerful than just like simple repetition?
Yeah, that's the counterintuitive genius of it. Spaced repetition, it deliberately uses the forgetting curve. It basically reintroduces information just as your memory of it is starting to fade. That little moment of effort, that slight strain to recall, that's what strengthens the neural pathways. It's kind of like exercising a muscle right at the edge of its current capacity. And then interleaving adds another layer. That's where you mix different topics or maybe different types of problems within a single study session. This forces your brain to constantly differentiate, to choose the right strategy for this problem, not just repeating the last one. And that deepens understanding much more than mastering one thing completely before moving to the next.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, started actively engaging. That's a huge leap already. But this isn't just about trying things once, it's about making progress stick. If learning is like building muscle, it's not just about showing up to the gym, it's how you lift, right? That seems to be where the guide's focus on really effective practice comes in, with deliberate practice.
Precisely. Deliberate practice isn't just mindless repetition, it's informed repetition. It
Yeah.
really hinges on identifying your specific weaknesses and then, well, relentlessly targeting them. So instead of just playing a guitar piece from start to finish over and over, you isolate that one tricky chord transition you always mess up, and you practice only that 20 times. But the critical component here, the one many people miss, is getting immediate high-quality feedback. How do you know what to target if you don't really know where you're falling short?
Oh, that's a common stumbling block, right? We often get feedback that's too general or maybe no feedback at all. How does the guide suggest we build effective feedback loops? Is it all about finding a mentor or are there ways to kind of generate your own feedback as you go?
The guide suggests both, actually. It emphasizes that feedback should be as specific and as immediate as possible. Sure, a mentor can be invaluable for that nuanced correction, but you can also generate self-feedback. Things like recording yourself, comparing your work to an ideal example, or maybe using analytics from online platforms if they're available. The key is to make it a continuous loop. Perform, get feedback, adjust, repeat. And this kind of practice, it really needs a system to thrive. Learning often fails not because we lack desire, but because we lack structure. So the guide pushes for scheduled, consistent learning sessions, making it almost a non-negotiable habit.
So it's not just about putting it in the calendar, but really protecting that time and building a routine around it. How does the guide recommend making it stick, especially when, life gets in the way? Is it about being super rigid or more about building flexible habits?
It's more about building flexible yet resilient habits. The guide talks about habit stacking, pairing your learning with something you already do every day, like maybe reading a foreign language news article while you drink your morning coffee, simple stuff, and tracking progress. That isn't just for motivation, although it helps. It's for meta-learning, learning about your own learning. A learning journal, for example, lets you reflect maybe weekly. Okay, what strategies worked? Where did I get stuck? How can I adjust for next week?
Hmm.
This kind of metacognition, thinking about your thinking, it turns setbacks into data points, data for improvement. It helps you evolve your system over time.
Okay, moving into optimizing our brains more directly. The guide explores how tapping into different learning modalities can really enhance retention. We often sort of gravitate to one way of learning, like visual or auditory, but it sounds like the guide suggests we should be more multimodal, mixing it up. What's the hidden power there in combining visual, auditory, and maybe kinesthetic approaches? Is it just about having more options?
Well, the power really lies in creating more robust and interconnected memory traces in your brain. See, when you only read about a concept, you're primarily using visual processing. But if you then discuss it out loud, that engages auditory processing. And then if you apply it hands-on, that's kinesthetic. You're engaging different parts of your brain, building multiple pathways to the same piece of information. So if one pathway gets temporarily blocked, maybe you're stressed or tired, you have others. This redundancy makes recall faster and more reliable, especially for complex stuff.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense. Redundancy is key. And speaking of simplifying complexity, the guide puts quite a bit of weight on mental models and analogies. These aren't just neat little tricks, are they? They seem more like foundational tools for really speeding up understanding.
Absolutely. Think of mental models as like scaffolding for new information. Instead of treating every new piece of data as totally isolated, you slot it into an existing simplified framework you already understand. For example, once you grasp the concept of feedback loops, you can instantly analyze loads of different things from how a thermostat works to why some habits are so hard to break. They allow for rapid pattern-based understanding. Analogies take this maybe a step further by connecting the unfamiliar to the familiar. Explaining electricity like water flowing through pipes isn't just a cute comparison. It instantly grounds an abstract concept in something physical you already get. It makes it feel immediately intuitive.
Okay, got it. And then maybe the ultimate test of understanding and also a powerful learning tool itself, teaching. The guide really champions the Feynman technique. But, for many people, the idea of teaching something when you feel like you're still learning it, that can feel incredibly intimidating. How does the guide address that hurdle? And what are the different levels of teaching someone can actually engage in? It doesn't have to be a formal lecture, right?
That's a crucial point, yeah. It's definitely not about giving a TED Talk on day two. The Feynman technique is primarily about clarifying things for yourself. It pushes you to explain a concept in the absolute simplest terms, like you were talking to a child, with no jargon. If you can't do that easily, well, you've just identified a gap in your own understanding. That's valuable information. The guide suggests various levels. You could just narrate your notes aloud, explain a concept to an imaginary friend, maybe write a short blog post, or even just create a simple diagram or video purely for yourself. The key is the act of creation. It forces synthesis and shines a spotlight on those knowledge gaps.
Right. Okay. Finally, beyond the direct learning techniques, the guide really emphasizes the whole environment and the habits that can either, supercharge or completely sabotage our learning efforts. Let's start with focus. Because in our totally distracted world, just sitting down to learn can sometimes feel like an Olympic sport.
It truly can feel that way. And the guide tackles this head on. It goes beyond just saying, turn off notifications, which, yes, you should do. It digs into things like flow triggers understanding when you are naturally most alert and focused, and then scheduling your most demanding learning tasks for those peak times. Protect that time. Techniques like Pomodoro, they aren't just about time management. They're about training your attention span, creating these short sprints of deep work followed by a break. It's also about consciously engineering your environment, maybe using browser extensions to block distracting sites, creating a dedicated physical learning space if you can. It's about putting up a proactive defense against all that digital noise.
And then there's the brain's actual physical hardware, our
Yeah.
bodies. We all know sleep, nutrition, and exercise are good for us generally, but the guide really underscores their direct impact on cognitive function, on memory consolidation, on learning itself.
Oh, the research here is just overwhelming. Sleep isn't downtime. It's prime memory consolidation time for the brain. Those recommended 7-9 hours. They aren't a luxury if you're serious about learning. They're essential for your brain to process and properly file away new information. Without good sleep, you're basically building on shaky ground. Similarly, optimal nutrition, things like omega-3s, leafy greens, they fuel neurotransmittal function. That directly impacts your focus and processing speed. And exercise, even just a short 20-minute walk, doesn't just clear your head. It actually increases blood flow to the brain, boosts neurogenesis, improves connectivity. It literally makes your brain work better, makes you more receptive to learning.
Wow. Okay, so it really is a virtuous cycle then. Learn effectively, optimize your brain's health. And then how do you make sure that long-term motivation and discipline stick, especially when the initial novelty of learning something new starts to wear off?
That's where the metagame of learning really comes in. The guide emphasizes setting micro goals, not just the big goal like learn Spanish, but breaking it down. Master 5 new verbs this week. Each small win gives you a little dopamine hit, builds momentum, and increases your sense of self-efficacy, that feeling that I can do this. It's about celebrating the journey, step by step, not just waiting for the final destination. And crucially, it highlights the power of community. Learning alongside others or even just having one accountability partner transforms what can be an isolated struggle into a shared journey. That dramatically increases persistence. It gives you external motivation when your internal drive maybe dips a bit. And finally, simple stuff. Strategically rewarding yourself after study sessions. It reinforces that positive loop, making learning something your brain actually looks forward to, not just another task on the to-do list.
So putting this all together, what's the biggest takeaway from this deep dive? It seems like rapid learning isn't some mystical talent, right? It's not reserved for a few geniuses. It really sounds like it's about understanding the underlying cognitive science and then consistently applying the right approach, the right strategies.
Exactly. Ultimately, it's about creating your own powerful personal toolkit for learning. By combining these elements, specific goals, active recall, deliberate practice, a robust learning system, plus that intelligent management of your time and health, you really can transform your ability to learn almost anything faster and much more effectively than you probably ever thought possible.
So after hearing all this, after this deep dive, what single, small, actionable step will you implement today? What one thing can you start doing right now to learn something new or significantly improve a skill you're already working on? Something to think about.